Lee, what's happening? How are you, sir?
I've had a few days at the Gabba, 4 days to be exact.
Damn, bro.
And I think you'll find that I performed like one of the best Englishmen that's ever been on that ground.
Really?
Yeah. If there was a competition for off-field activities,
you were in it and you won it.
I am on the podium, I would say.
You are. Yeah, the 4 days is like, that's not a singular event.
No.
Like, that's a multi-day, multi-event event itself.
I think I would have gone for 5, but on day 2, I stayed out a bit longer than I should. So,
oops.
So yeah, are you a cricket fan yourself?
Oh man, I'm used to be a cricket fan. With business ownership, I've had to say goodbye to many things I enjoyed watching.
Mm-hmm.
And cricket, I grew up with cricket.
Yeah,
I love a test. Don't get me wrong. I've been to the Ashes. I've sat in a box for the thing. I will happily sit on a couch for 8 hours straight and stare at a green oval and listen to the commentary and just enjoy every moment of that experience. I love it. But I couldn't tell you who's playing.
Okay.
I've got no idea. We're not up to
Well, Australia are playing India right now. So.
Oh, really? And as a purist, I get confused about the 2020. I was like, that's silly. I want more cricket. Why would I want less and make it shorter?
I'm a long form cricket fan, so I'm old fashioned like that. So
yeah, I mean, I think cricket never had a stop, right? 5 days was a rule change for the sport.
No. That was the traditional method. I do know that there used to be 8-ball overs back in the day, and then they moved that to 6. And I do believe that in the earliest days of cricket, it was unlimited days for Test matches. So
unlimited days. Can you imagine?
Yeah. So
could you handle an unlimited day event for yourself?
Can you imagine the drinking escapades then? And also, a little fun fact about England's greatest ever batsman, W.G. Grace.
Yeah.
Because he was Dr. W.G. Grace, if he edged the ball, or if he was plumb right in front of the wicket and he didn't fancy being out, he'd just say to the umpire, I didn't edge that, or I edged it onto my pad. I'm not LBW, and the umpires would go, no problem, Dr. Grace, we believe you. So that was the the old form of DRS, I think, the old technology. So
yeah, just a bit of honesty system.
Just see.
That'd work today, right? No one would
just see Dr. WG.
Yep. Yeah, it's all good. No, officer. No, I didn't hit it. You were silly. That was my dad that made that noise.
And the other thing I learned about the Gabba, it's one of the only grounds in the world where the groundsman can tell the umpire to stop the game.
Really?
Because of impending weather.
Wow.
Yeah.
The groundsman can control the game.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there was a lot of confusion at the ground.
Yep.
By people who obviously didn't understand that. But I, even whilst inebriated, I understood that the groundsmen were going off.
Coming out, they're saying, "Get the fuck off."
Yeah. They're looking at the local radar and
they're across it,
and that's what they're finding.
We've had plenty of the water coming out of the sky too, haven't we?
So 1-1 with 2 to play, and they head to Melbourne.
Oof, let's go. Will you watch it? Do you watch it as well?
Yeah, I'm a cricket fanatic, quite frankly. Yeah.
You love it, but not more than rugby league, though.
My relationship with rugby league is very unique. I compare my relationship with rugby league to somebody who's got a spouse who they have just been with for 30 years, and they're with them because they've been with them for 30 years.
Yep.
That's probably the best way to describe it.
So you
used to love each other ferociously.
Yep.
And because of that ferocious love in the first half of your relationship, you maintain a compatriotism. What's the word I'm looking for? A partnership. And obviously there are things about it that work. I also happen to be quite good at what I do, I think. So it'd be silly just to leave it. But honestly, I can't sit here and say I absolutely love the game in the same way as I used to.
Yeah. Is there anything you attribute to that happening? Is it a change in the game itself? Or just your time with it, and it's a kind of more of a job now? So
I think
things like cricket is what draws you to the enjoyment.
Cricket and soccer, as in football, I've always maintained a distance between myself and the players. It's just been there. And you know the old saying, "Don't meet your heroes." Well, from age 16, I was rubbing shoulders with players that my dad was paying for me to go and watch weeks before, and I was training alongside them, and then a bit later I was coaching those who were trying to be in those positions. So I just think I've become too immersed in it over time, and over time it has become more like work rather than a complete and utter passion. That doesn't mean I don't love it, and I keep going back to that analogy of the wife that you've been with for 30 years, or the husband if you're a lady listening, or whoever marries husbands these days.
It's a modern world, brother.
Yeah.
A lot of options.
Just because you're not viciously in love, ferociously in love, doesn't mean you don't love. So, going a really long answer to your question, I still get like a kid in a candy store when the test match is on, or if I'm going to watch Manchester City back home. Rugby league, I tend to analyse it a bit more. It's got a little bit of a different place in my head.
Yeah. And so for those who don't know, Rugby League Coach is the Instagram handle, and you play in the rugby league space and have done. I've had you on before, and did the big "This Is Your Life" story on where you've been and what you've done. You are rugby league, essentially.
I'm immersed in it. It's in my DNA.
You've coached all of the people or had something to do with them at all sorts of points in time, and been across from junior development stuff right through the top tier stuff as well. Where are you playing now? Where are you at the moment?
I currently have a book on the way.
Oh, let's go.
So I've, at the time of speaking, I'm on 67,000 words.
Dang,
and
bro.
Before New Year's Eve, that will be 70 or 80 plus. And then after New Year's Eve, all the formatting, etc., will start, and the publishing process will happen, and the editing, and then the publishing process. So I'm right in the middle of that at the minute. In terms of coaching, I've spent a lot of time in the last year just mentoring coaches, so I'm actually immersed in quite a few different places and clubs.
Coaching the coaches.
Not actually coached a team for a couple of years now, and I've got to be honest, I don't miss that, and I'm very specific about what I want to do next, which is I want to coach something like an emerging nation.
Oh, that'd be fun.
Get hold of them, metaphorically, and put in youth development systems that bear fruit in 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years and onwards. And that, I've been on record a few times saying that, and it's just a case of waiting for that opportunity to come up, because I've done that much club, rugby league and whatnot now. I did need a break from it, Jonny. You would know, maybe in your earliest journey as being a form of personal trainer, when you first start out in the game, you're in competitive environs, and sometimes you have to give of yourself for free to get ahead, if you like. Rugby league is like that, but on steroids. And yes, I've been paid and paid reasonably well from rugby league for quite a long time now. However, you still end up doing an awful lot more than your wages are sometimes, and because rugby league is a sport that's always trying to be bigger. And whereas some of the bigger sports in the world, let's use NFL, for example, even the college coaches, I've coached the equivalent of college, but in Australia, in rugby league, but they would get at least $2 million more than me a year in wages. They would have at least 50 more staff than I ever had, 49 of which would have been full-time. So
all on huge salaries too.
Yeah, so it's rugby league looks bigger on the outside than it is quite often, I think. And like, for example, in the emerging nations and the emerging nations I've been involved with, you don't get paid for that. You don't get paid to coach those teams. You're lucky if you get a flight. It's different, and a lot of people don't expect to be paid either. So I truly would like to go in with somebody who has good commercial acumen.
Yep.
I'd happily coach for free, but the development systems and everything else would obviously be a different kettle of fish, and could also contribute some finances to the national game in that area. So, yeah, I like to think of this as a sabbatical.
Oh, geez, that would be fun to sink your teeth into an emerging
nation
and then
I sort of see it as my next challenge, really. It sort of meshes together so many places that I've worked at already. So, so it would look really good, I think, and I think I'd be perfectly suited to that.
It'll put you somewhere else, and then all the things that come on the other side of it, right? That would be wild.
No, I'm definitely looking forward to it. It's and the right thing will come up. I'm leaving it with the universe, Jonny.
Mate, I'm a true believer of that. You just got to put it out there, right?
That's right.
You don't ask, you don't put it out the planet. No one knows you want to do it.
That's right. And the amount of people who I know who are looking for jobs and things like that, and they apply for this and they apply for that, and they don't get it. They give up, and then all of a sudden something lands on their lap.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, mate. The idea of a book. When do you decide I want to write a book? And is it the book of your adventures, or what are you covering in that story there?
When did I decide I wanted to write the book? I actually don't remember that point. I thought to myself when Ipswich State High won the national title in 21, I think it was, or 22. I'd built that program from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 years into it, I left to start another one that got huge as well. And all the assistants that worked under me at Ipswich State High simply stepped up one place.
Mm-hmm.
And at the start of that process, I did a huge, nearly 200-page document outlining exactly how I would carry out the project with their help. And it would be fair to say, Jonny, that 90% of that has been delivered. And goal number 5 on the 5-stage plan was to be the best program in Australia.
Yeah.
And in 2022, they achieved that with the same human resources that were in place. Now, I wasn't at the school for that moment. I'd taken a different avenue, but I'd essentially trained up the guy who was in my place and some of the others as well.
That's even more a testament to your success, I think, is you didn't even have to be there for it to even happen. You put it so much in place.
I suppose so. So that gave me a bit... It took me away from thinking about the team in any given year to the bigger picture. What can happen in 5 to 10 years? And with this document, I thought, I can do something with this. And then as I had a look at it, I thought I could think so much more about that, bring that. So what has now emerged is a rugby league coaching book, which I think is the first of its kind in about 30 years. But it's not an X's and O's. It's not diagrams of drills or anything like that. If people want drills, they can go on my website. It's anecdotes that back up theories. And I think it will be very readable. And there's a few of my opinions in there as well. And anybody who's followed my socials for any period of time knows I can be quite opinionated. So I don't think I'm backward in coming forward quite often, and I like to call a spade, and I've enjoyed writing it. I'm writing a section now that I'm really getting my teeth into, and that's why I know it's going to be finished in a few weeks because I know myself and I know how I work, and it's quite cathartic as well. And I think the other thing is you've got to have the balls to put yourself out there. There's probably quite a few more people out there qualified to write a book than me on coaching rugby league based on where they've coached. But I don't know if anybody in the rugby league world has got the range of experiences that I've had. And also I can and do work with coaches who have been at high levels or are at high levels or at the lowest levels of our game. And to me, I feel that I deal with them equally. So, and can empathise with them equally as well because of the stages I've taken in my coaching career. So, yeah, February or March it'll be out there, and everybody will be sick of hearing about it.
Do you self-publish, or do you have someone on board to support that as well?
No, I'm self-publishing that too. Literally just completed the account setup just before I hooked on online with you to do this pod. So.
That's cool.
I am the kind of person who just makes a decision and gets on with it. I don't dilly-dally on things. So I found the group that can publish with minimum fuss.
Yep.
I've got a guy, my best mate over in Australia. He's a former journalist, so he's going to be my editor. So he'll edit it, and
perfect.
He's looking forward to reading it. He said so himself, so because he's a rugby league man as well. So,
got some stories in there as well.
Definitely. I think I should give you a couple of them.
Give us a couple good ones.
The story of when I arrived at St. Gregory's College. It was a school that was famous for rugby league back in the day. Yep. But there was a back page in the Sydney Daily Telegraph that said words to the effect of rugby league is dying at St. Gregory's Rugby Union is taking over. Mm-hmm. So yours truly got the phone call to come in and take over the coaching job. And when I met with the boss said, Lee, I believe it's going to take you 3 years to rebuild this academy to where everyone wants it to be.
Yep.
So it's going to be a long-term job. And I replied with, Mr. Miller, you've obviously not been coached by Lee Addison before, have you? And he laughed. And I laughed. And I walked out of there. I thought, shit, I'd best deliver this. Anyway. Long story short, I spent a term studying as much as I could before I started.
Is that how you like to do it when you go into a place? Just, not change, just see what's happening. Get
a feel 100%. I do like to. I believe the job starts with the signature. Even if you're not getting paid, you get paid to deliver it. Once you sign on, if you've got time to, I mean, obviously, if you take over in round 3 of a 20-team season, you haven't got time to do this. But if you have got time before you commence the role officially, I know the England soccer manager has a similar scenario now. He starts on January the 1st, but he has also said that the work starts with the signature, which was 2 months ago. So you prepare and you learn and you find out as much as you can. And what I did at St. Gregory was I found out how much history the place had and how passionate people were about it. I also found out what had gone right and what had gone wrong, and spoke to the coach about who he thought was suitable for what position, etc. When I started with the boys in the new year, I basically said every position was up for grabs, and whatever had happened before was a blank slate. There was a blank slate now.
Oh, I love that speech.
And
did anyone shit themselves? Did
anybody what? Sorry,
did anyone poop himself thinking I'm going to get cut, or was it
a
just
few did? Yeah, a few did.
Ego with the lad, can't touch me.
And I also don't. I think I'm a little bit different. I've done some different things in my coaching career that have worked, but your average rugby league person wouldn't think like this, I don't think, because they like to stay in comfort zones, whereas I'm comfortable being uncomfortable. And I said to the players, whatever position you want to trial in, you can have a go. And this skinny, scrawny, pimply, spotty kid came up to me with braces in his teeth.
Yep.
And said, "Sir, can I have a go at 5'8"? I said, "Yeah, of course you can, mate. What's your name?" He said, "James Tedesco."
Stop it.
And I looked down at the list.
Yep.
And he was number 22 in the book.
He's at the bottom.
I've got the book just to my right here and in my archival cupboard there.
Yep. Had you drawn any ideas about him at that point when this little fella's come to you and said, "Can I have a crack at this 5'8" role"?
Well, we'd not properly started. So, I went off this previous list.
Yep.
So Teddy would have been stuck on the sideline somewhere waiting to come on and have a run.
Mm.
And his note said fast, elusive, needs to get bigger, or words to that effect.
Yep.
Good wing, maybe fullback.
Yep.
Threw him in at 6, and it took me about 30 seconds to decide that he was the man to be the 5'8". And to this day, I've never coached anybody like him at 5'8". And we won the premiership that year. The school went crazy, the Borders in particular.
Did you say, "Hey, that was a quick 3 years"? I told you.
Yeah, and then we were the first team. We're the first team to go back-to-back premierships at the school for 20 years. So,
wow.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. Lee, you've brought the good times back, etc., thought process, and then, so that's one story in there. Another story is about how when I was at Manly, they won the premiership in 2008.
Yeah.
And I went to ask Des Hasler, who I was working under at the time, why do you think they won the premiership? And he said it's a culmination of a few things. Didn't really elaborate. The assistant, Dennis Moore, was a lot closer to. And I said, "Dennis, why do you think Manly won the premiership?" And he said, "Ben Kennedy." I said, "What are you on about, mate? He left the club 2 years ago." And the story is that Ben Kennedy basically come into the club a few years earlier and was astonished at how lackadaisical the training was. And I don't know if you remember Ben Kennedy, but if you imagine the scariest looking man you can imagine with no hair, who also played for Australia, New South Wales, as well as, I think, Newcastle before he went to Manly.
Yeah.
When he screams at you on the training field, you probably want to go, "Yes, Mr. Kennedy."
Start doing the thing he's asking you to do.
And apparently he single-handedly changed the training approaches. And people forget about Des Hasler that before he won that premiership and before he was in the 2007 grand final with Manly, he was actually a really novice coach. He was a strength and conditioning coach that ended up as head coach by default. And his original plan, I don't think, was to be a head coach, but he ended up being the head coach because he was Des Hasler. And credit to Des, he worked so hard that he ended up being a very, very successful head coach. But back then, he was actually quite a novice coach, and there would have been gaps in his approach to things. And I think Ben Kennedy filled one of those, according to Dennis, the assistant, anyway. Yeah. Although I'm sure Des would rather take all the credit for that. So it's full of stories like that. So I might come up with a theory of what you should do and then back it up with some kind of theory. We talk about recruitment in there. We talk about everything you can think of with regards to to coaching, what you coach, how you coach it, how you deliver it, the different stages of learning, etc., etc., etc. So we talk a little bit about sports science, although I don't claim to be an expert in that field, but talk about the importance of a coach having enough knowledge to ask the right questions. So, I think it'll be a good read for people who like that kind of thing.
I think so. I think they'll love that. And because, you've been across so many different places of this amazing sport that we all love, and all those cool little stories.
You're a Bronco, aren't you, Jonny?
Yeah, I love Broncos. I love them at the start of the year, and then they start sucking. And it works out really well because the powerlifting calendar gets quite busy then too. So then all of a sudden I stop loving them.
The Broncos have not won the comp since the Gold Coast Titans arrived into the comp.
Yeah, it sucks.
Titans arrived 07, the Broncos last won it in 06.
And that was it. No more.
And now, of course, you've got the Dolphins in there too, competing for all the best juniors and whatnot.
It's lean times. It frustrates me. But I will say I just recently started going back to the game to watch it with my daughter.
Okay.
And we've been on the Sunday game the last 2 years. And she would have been 2 and 3 this year when we went. And that was great fun.
Yeah.
And a whole new way of watching the game when I had.
They put on a good show at Suncorp, don't they?
It was so much fun. They stupidly lost both games. And I think it was to the bloody Titans, actually, to be honest. So my daughter and my wife, who's not from Brisbane originally, have not seen the Broncos win a game. But I will say it's been very enjoyable to go there with my daughter. With
all the
stuff, it's great.
All the chat, if you like, about what has gone wrong there is that the lunatics were allowed to run the asylum, basically.
Yeah, right.
So
it's a hard thing to change. A lot of big personalities have been through that place, right?
Yeah, so Madge has been brought in, Michael Maguire, to bring some discipline back into the joint.
Yeah. I saw some reports earlier that he'd smashed them. In running and conditioning and base stuff early stages, right?
And I do think, I'd love your opinions on this too, even though you're the one asking the questions. But I think we are going through societal change all the time, and I think what things you were allowed to say to players and to employees 20, 30 years ago, you're not allowed to say now. Things you were allowed to say to employees 5 years ago and players 5 years ago, you're not allowed to say now.
Nope.
And people take that to the nth degree. And it's the same in education, for example. So at one end of the continuum is harsh discipline, the cane.
Yep.
At the other end of the continuum is, they've got a tough life at home, and we'll just put them we'll just take them out of the classroom, we'll put them in a comfortable room where they can get distracted and find some other ways that they can be engaged. And I think this shift into how leaders are meant to talk to their subordinates, for want of a better term, I think it's been misconstrued. In my experience, people still want discipline. People still want boundaries. People still want feedback. They want to be told if they are doing something wrong.
Absolutely.
It's all about the delivery of it. It's about the delivery of it. So if a coach screams at someone and calls them every name under the sun because they dropped the ball for the third time and tells them they've got a little appendage and whatever else they want to say about them, that's not going to be accepted anymore in most cases. But the player, I believe, still wants that feedback.
Oh, yeah.
But in a more respectful way. And that's where I think people mix it up so much. And that's why I think sometimes we have a society and thoughts about crime, etc., the way it's dealt with, and we think it's lenient. I think somewhere along the line we've lost the balance between what is discipline.
Back, right? You can almost be too scared. You're like, whoa, man, there's too many things I can't do, so well, fuck it, I won't. But then you just let behaviour continue. And old mate dropping the ball is just going to keep fucking dropping the ball. Very frustrating. I think when I watched the Broncos played over the last bit, like when they suck, they just continue to suck. They never seem to be able to get out of a rut. And whenever I watch at the start of the year, not that I pretend to know a lot about it, I'm a fan of the game. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but they always look good and they always look like they have a good playing group to do well. But then all of a sudden they just lose one, maybe they shouldn't, and then they lose another one, and then one person goes down and then the ship sinks. Which that sucks to see. And there must have to be a cultural component to that back in the shed, something that's being missed right from the playing group.
Something else I refer to in the book is the balance of your squad. And I'm a big Manchester City fan, but the top shelf of my bookshelf is an awful lot of Sir Alex Ferguson, who was the famous Manchester United manager who was so successful over so many years. And reading and through his stuff and listening to much of his talk since he retired, he talks about the importance of balancing your team. And he brings it into 3 different categories. For argument's sake, I'll keep them all at 33.3332% of the side, right? So 1/3 of your side needs to be experienced, and they've seen it all before, and they can help the younger players in the squad. 1/3 of your side needs to be young players that don't have any fear and are happy to take risks and may have some good games and bad games. And I put your likes of Reece Walsh in that category. Yep. But your most important group is the middle group that are all in their peak. Who are at their peak athletically, their peak in terms of concentration and knowledge of the game and how they should play, etc., etc. What the experienced players do is when you do go 12-0 down behind and you're behind the sticks waiting for the kick, the experienced players make sure the right messages are coming across. I give you the effect at South Sydney of Adam Reynolds leaving South Sydney and going to Brisbane. A big part of their DNA left the club. A big part of their leadership left the club. And what basically happened for a while there is South Sydney were replaced in the top 4 by Brisbane Broncos because of that. Because they had him. And if you do look at the balance of the Broncos squad over this time, I think they've got too many young ones.
Yeah,
they've done what I believe to be a very common mistake. They've carried out a very common mistake, which is putting their investment wholly in a young group and hoping they'll grow old together. There's a few problems with that. Number one,
they can't.
They all go through those aging processes, the different stages together.
Yep.
And if they happen to have a bad day together, it can be quite catastrophic. Number two, when you just focus on that and bringing kids through, people pick off your best ones sometimes. And there's been a couple of people leave the Broncos, the Herbie Farmworths, the Tom Fleglers, etc., that left a huge hole in there. So, Manchester City are going through a similar problem now. Most of their squad that are the game changers are well into their 30s.
Yeah.
And it seems like they may have taken their eye off the ball a year or so ago when they should have been rejuvenating the squad. So these things really matter. The Australian cricket team, every single one of them, apart from one, is over 30.
Yeah.
Usman Khawaja on Wednesday celebrated his 38th birthday, and he's opening the batting for Australia. So they seem to have a problem with that too. And what can happen when you have so many older players like that together? Next year, they might all a few of them might age a bit more. Their reactions might be a bit slower. Their legs might be a bit slower. I've noticed a couple of the Australian cricket team look a little bit heavier than they used to. So, there's so much more that goes into it than just, oh, they look good. You know, they're playing nice. Yeah. How do they handle being in charge of a game? Who's the one in charge of the metronome of the game, you know? And I think that's where the Broncos have got it so wrong over the years.
It seems like a simple rule, though. Like I don't even harbour the idea of how to coach a rugby league team, but when you explain it like that rule, 33% of each, that really makes sense of how you would build a team, right?
Yeah.
Because then you have a balance across the whole sheet. That can all be an X factor. Then you've also got the experience to be able to control the X factor. And then you've got some meat in the middle that are going to be consistently good as well. And then all different ages.
I think it's tough. It's easier said than done, because if you've got an abundance of young kids, there'll be some that you are worried about letting go because they might become better somewhere else.
Yep. Yeah, true that.
So let's not forget Reece Walsh left to go to the Warriors and then came back. So they did let him go at one point. Yeah. The same with the older players. Sometimes it's hard to project what they'll be in a year's time. I mean, Broncos have got Adam Reynolds and Ben Hunt at 6 and 7 to start next season. Combined age over 70. Now, based on Adam Reynolds' recent history, he's gonna find it hard to stay on the field. Ben Hunt still looks sprightly for now. But when you're that age, an off season can be a long time.
And then, from an injury perspective, the older guys are going to take a bit longer too, right?
That's right. And it's like, it's the same as having a beer, isn't it? It takes you longer to recover. It's just the way the body changes.
Yeah. Do you think looking at the people overlooking these top teams look at that kind of rule? Do they consider that a rule at an NRL level? Well, what's going through the head when they're trying to build a team? Are they a bit too hyper focused on this year and not thinking about the years?
I think it depends where they are on the ladder. So I think West Tigers are a good example of a club that has to pay overs to get players because they've not travelled fantastically historically. Whereas the Panthers can pick and choose, the Storm can pick and choose, the Roosters can pick and choose. The Panthers and the Storm are great examples of squad balance. I think their staffs really get that and really understand that. The Roosters squad looks a little bit out of whack in terms of there's a lot of players left this year and possibly haven't been replaced. So it doesn't take much for it to be knocked out of line, put it that way. Whereas for so long, the Roosters seem to have been quite good at that. So, I do think the better clubs do understand that. I really do. Whereas if you're a West Tigers, you're a Gold Coast Titans, maybe St. George, sometimes you just got to get the players because you need better players in your squad, and it doesn't matter if they're 32 or 22, and you need that player. And
like that bottom 8 club, those bottom tier clubs that aren't performing, to bring someone to your club, that would be a huge challenge, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, somebody like Jerome Luai coming to the West Tigers, I have no doubt that that's going to give them a few extra memberships.
Yeah.
A few extra jersey sales with Luai on the back.
Yeah.
Is it going to fix their team? I would be very skeptical about saying yes.
Yeah.
Particularly because the coach isn't very experienced at all at coaching. So I analysed his team a lot for my podcast this last season, and
he needs to read your book.
Yeah, I don't know if Benji Marshall would send me a Christmas card.
Do you know him personally at all?
No. I know his manager personally.
Yeah. So he's
known his manager for a long time.
He's not sliding into your DMs and saying thanks for the feedback.
I think, I mean, it wouldn't stop me. I mean, the beauty about what I do, mate, is that I'm just an independent voice. So I don't want to kiss anybody's ass to get a job, so
absolutely.
I'll just tell it as I see it. I was actually calling for Kevy's head 5-6 months before the media did, and I think one of the reasons is that so many of the media are ex-teammates of Kevy's, or indeed, in the case of Fox, ex-work colleagues of Kevy's. And Kevy, by all accounts, are a really nice man. I know his brother Steve, who's a really nice man, and they're a really nice family. So,
just it was time.
But yeah, it was clear that they needed to do something else. Just like you got rid of Brando from this podcast, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. And I'll make sure I edit that in. We're going to see exceptional growth now we don't have him there. He was definitely a boat anchor. Love him. Absolutely not. Do you think Madge will be able to cause a great enough effect to see some really good success for the Broncos next year? Or does that time?
We spoke earlier about this transition in life, how some people don't believe that they want to be spoken to in a certain way. I think Madge seems to have learned that, but is still disciplined with that respect element.
Yeah. And
I think what he did with New Zealand and what he did with New South Wales are testament to those things.
Yeah. That's it. You can't learn that in a book, though, right? That's
no.
Some people have got that knack, that skill to be able to do that.
So, and again, I don't know Madge personally, but I know somebody who's very close mates with him, and I know a few people who have been in contact with Madge over the years, and they all, to a man, say what a great bloke he is.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that is unifying. You know, it's a unifying trait. Something else to talk about in the book is, sounds like a book serialization. This podcast, but the book talks about Mal Meninga, who I bet you have probably been led to believe is an average coach who's been lucky to have the best Queensland side ever and some of the best Australian sides ever, you know, and
lucky every single time.
And everybody I know who's been either playing for the Kangaroos, who I used to coach, or has been on the staff there, can't speak highly enough of Mal Meninga as an operator, as a leader and a coach. And the conclusion I've come up with is that it's easier if you're a good person, and therefore a good man manager, or whatever the term is for the females now, person manager. If you can manage a group of people and be a great leader of people, if your technical knowledge isn't there yet, you can gain that technical knowledge. If you happen to be a great technical coach, but you're a shit person, that's very hard to turn that around.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the playing group just won't have buy-in, right? They're not going to listen.
That's right.
To things.
And if you have a look at the history of sporting appointments, particularly in rugby league, some clubs will go from one example of a great man manager who kept the squad happier, but then tactically they might have been found wanting after a few years, so they replaced them with a technician. And then the players were complaining 2 years down the line about
the person.
So the lesser clubs tend to struggle with that a lot more.
But at that level, couldn't they just bring someone in that can help with the tactical side of things?
That's what you'd expect, isn't it? Like if you're the CEO of a business but you can't type, you get a secretary to do your typing, don't you?
Yeah, just get them in. Just get the person to run the show and be the.
I think it's because many coaches don't want to admit that they're lacking something technically. And I think there's an ecosystem in the game where the more technical garbage you can churn out, the more intelligent people think you are.
I think that's everywhere.
So
I see it in powerlifting. All the coaches writing up big words on Instagram about how their thing and that particular group of individual muscles.
Yeah, you must see it in your industry all the time.
Just banging my head against that microphone, just like, man, you're just sounding good to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. The rugby league equivalent is coaching to the gallery, coaching so that everybody watching the session can hear what you're saying, as opposed to the players actually understanding what they need to do. I'll give you one thing I normally do when I coach a game. I often say to the players, I'm going to teach you the rules of this game once.
Yep.
And I tell them the rules of the game. And then I say, now what I'm going to coach you in this game, you will learn about this because I will blow the whistle and say turnover. So, for example, if they catch the ball on the chest, and that's what I'm looking for them not to do, I blow a turnover, and then they realise. So I actually put the onus on the players to work it out.
Yeah, I love
right?
it.
And what then happens is, particularly if you've got a new squad that haven't met each other before, they start talking to each other.
That's good.
And you're off to the races.
Yeah. Do you get a few frustrated players, though, in that process? Because they hit the chest when they're not supposed to, and you just go...
Yeah. But I'll just tell them to shut up and get on with it.
There must be... there'd have to be some ego out in those training fields, particularly in the high... I mean, in all high-level stuff.
Yeah.
That out there that would be a challenge for a coach, whether it's assistant level or head coach, to manage and look after.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, nowhere is there more ego than in A-grade football.
Yeah.
So I'm risking an awful lot of abuse about saying this, but most A-grade footballers in the park are failed footballers who didn't get where they wanted to, so they play in the park.
Mm-hmm.
Yet some of them have real ego when it comes to some of the demands they put in a club, which has always baffled me. Baffled me. Because if they were so great, they'd be playing Origin or NRL or
playing for the big one, getting paid properly, getting paid the big one, wouldn't they? Damn. Do you think the game's healthy? Rugby league is good.
It's healthier than where it was.
Yep.
So somebody on my Facebook, and I mentioned them on my podcast, said rugby league is flying at the moment. And I said back on the podcast, I said, write back to me, mate, and tell me why it's flying. Where is it flying to? I think it's flying in comparison where it has been.
Yep.
So the best period for rugby league for me was, well, it was probably 80 years ago before any of us were even conceived. But in our lifetimes was the Tina Turner times in Australia, but also in England at the time. Rugby league was the second biggest spectator sport in the country.
Really?
Right? What happened then was Rupert Murdoch opened his wallet and tried to buy up every sport that he could make money out of. Mm-hmm. And he spent a lot of money acquiring the Football Association Premier League in England because you honestly, people forget the old First Division in football wasn't, it was big, but it wasn't as big as it is now, nowhere near. And he also tried to buy Rugby League. But in Australia, the game split. Half the clubs decided they wanted to stay with the status quo. The other half went with Super League. And I think the problem with that is that it's like any divorce, right? If a husband gets caught out doing some different things away from like I know a couple that have just split up because one of them's gambling, right? If they want to get back together, the perpetrator of the gambling will have to compromise with his ex-beau, and say, right, I won't gamble anymore. So there's an element of compromise. And then if he eventually has his partner over a barrel, so to speak, he can always say, well, if you do that again, I'm going to go out. I might as well go out and go gambling again. So you're always on that brink. Once you compromise, you're always give or take. And I think that's what's happened in rugby league. The two sides have come back together very quickly to form the NRL. But quite often the clubs, we don't read about this, but quite often the clubs hold the NRL to ransom sometimes about certain things. The players hold their clubs and the game to ransom about certain things. So we're always on the precipice of a strike. and then there'll be a signature of all the clubs, and then we'll be at peace for another 3 years.
Yeah.
And we've never truly recovered what we had in those Tina Turner days. Now, if you look at the way Peter V'landys, the chair, and Andrew Abdo, the CEO of the NRL, promote the game, it is very much make rugby league great again.
Yeah.
Right? It's like Donald Trump, who's become the president-elect of a country that is yesterday's hero in many ways. A lot of its old institutions are breaking down. The buildings are all old and in a state of disrepair in some places. The infrastructures are creaking. The medical systems under pressure, etc., etc. And Donald Trump has marketed towards nostalgia.
Yep.
Make America great again, and giving people back jobs, and rather than outsourcing and like. If you look at rugby league's marketing, it's very much like that again. Talking about bringing the Bears back, Perth back. Often there's things leaked into the media about the 5 games on a day happening in the NRL again. The potential return of the NYC under-20s or similar. Yep. So there's a lot of that goes on, a lot of that. They brought a Tina Turner tribute band out the other year. There's a lot of that marketing and themes going in that direction. He went back to 1 referee instead of 2 referees.
Yeah.
So that's given rugby league, I believe, a jolt in the arm.
Yep. Nice.
Right? People are thinking, oh, this is the game I used to like. But they're also a lot smarter than that. They're doing things to the game which is actually cheesing off some older fans, but the younger fans are loving the tries that are coming from the 6 again rule, for example, and the flowing football, whereas the older fan wants it a bit more attritional. But anyway, AFL, on the other hand, are a bit more like China, and they've just been plodding away for 50 years incrementally.
Just being a machine.
And they've got their house in order. And they are creeping up in a huge way. And we didn't see them coming because they weren't loud.
Yeah, they're just sneaking in. So
there's places in Sydney now where you will see more AFL people than rugby league people on certain fields. Whoa. There's a field in Ipswich called Alan Langer Field where more AFL is played now than rugby league. I can give you countless examples. I was up in Mornington Island a couple of years ago, and the PE teacher of that school wrote to all these people in the NRL, the QRL, the New South Wales Rugby League, the AFL, the soccer, etc., and Lee Addison. And I went up there to do some coaching. And while they were up there, they're telling me the AFL had been up 6 times.
Yep.
Soccer had been up 3 times.
Yeah.
The service was fantastic. And there was little old me with...
You were rugby league.
With my one-man band. And the NRL, the QRL, the New South Wales. I'd been nowhere near them. And all those kids loved rugby league, but they had more knowledge about AFL than they did about true rugby league things, if you like. So they are swamping our game. Peter V'landys won't be the leader forever. He's not a young man. He's doing everything right. I can't criticise him for much, really. And as you know, I'm quite a critic of things, so for me to be able to say that shows you how much I respect the guy and his work.
Yeah.
But if there is a weakness in it, I can see it from the outside. It just looks like it's like you're giving an old person an injection to keep them alive for 5 years, kind of thing. Like that's where I see rugby league is at. So none of this will be worth a cent if eventually there's not more pumped into youth development.
Yeah. I mean,
the concussion problem is not going away. If you look at the patterns around the world, NRL has it's got it coming, right? We've already had somebody go to court because they perceive training to be too hard or disrespectful. So there's that balance again, you know. So yeah, things are changing. So rugby league is doing well, but if you're outside of Australia, I think it's in one of the worst states it's been in my lifetime.
Damn, that sucks. Is it dwindling in the other countries? You think like
they made a decision to knock the World Cup down from 16 to 10. So that all meant that 6 teams couldn't qualify at all. I've been part of the Ireland World Cup stuff in 2008. They have gone from being 2-time World Cup quarter-finalists to not even getting proper rugby league international status recently. I was with the USA 2011 and 2013. They have gone from quarter-finalists to being the worst team in 2017. So quarter-finalists when I was involved in 2013, the worst team in the tournament by far in 2017, didn't even qualify in 2022. Poland, I had them for 6 test matches, undefeated. The latest rankings have come out in the last 24 hours. We were ranked 21st, I think, from memory, in my time. Now not even ranked. I could go on and on and on and on and on.
Hard to grow a sport when you're cutting teams out of the world champs.
So Wales, who America beat in the 2013 World Cup, have been 2 times World Cup semi-finalists. Yeah. At the last World Cup, they were one of the worst teams at the World Cup. The English Super League, I would say the crowds for the finals have probably gone up a little bit this year, but in recent years, over the last decade, they've probably dropped 20 or 30,000. So in a crowd of 80,000, that's quite significant. It's over a quarter. No, for the big finals.
They're going to watch something else instead.
So, yeah, I do fear for the game outside of Australia. Yeah. And I honestly would go as far to say Volandis and Abdo are our last hope.
Yeah.
Because I don't think you can underestimate that television money back in early 1993 because it sent the Premier League through the roof. It sent other sports through the roof. Cricket is well known around the world. Cricket's got its problems. Rugby union's got its problems. Yeah. But they are well known around the world. Nobody knows about rugby league apart from people on the eastern seaboard of Australia.
Pretty much.
One motorway in the north of England, a little bit of the south of France.
Yeah.
Papua New Guinea, and some people in Auckland and Wellington, and a bit in Christchurch. Like these, yeah. And that we could have said that 40 years ago.
Yeah, as well. So the evolution. Do you think there's a global push to try and grow the thing, or
no? No, I don't. I think the people who are in charge of that are absolutely useless, and in any other walk of life they'd be sacked. And if they had any decency and care for the game, they would have walked away because they've failed really, really poorly.
They would realise they've missed it up. Would you ever do an administration role?
Say that again.
Would you ever do an administration role within your sport?
No, I did. My first jobs out of university were as a press officer at Super League clubs, so I've done them.
We need you on the board of something, bro.
I feel that I am impacting the game better doing what I'm doing. My podcast is well listened to. Good following on social media. Yep. I can say and do what I want within reason. So, I don't care who I upset. if something's bad, I'll say it's bad. So I just feel, I've got the freedom to write a book. So when you work for a club or you work for an organisation, you don't have to be behind bars to be in a prison, do you? So
that's a good way to think.
I would work in administration if it was a brand new territory or country, and I was the head of football in that administration. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
That's how I'd do it.
Yeah,
need to find somebody with deep pockets to fund it.
Yeah, and then we get to grow the game.
Yeah,
as well. That start bringing.
I think it'd be a great challenge for somebody who wants to fund something like that, because imagine being able to break this old cycle of old boys network. It'd be fantastic.
Make rugby league great again. I love it. Do you have a crystal ball for the new year? I'm sure you've made some predictions on where you see who's going to do well, who's going to do poorly in the round.
Do you mean in terms of the NRL?
Yeah, in the NRL. Do you have a crystal ball? Do you have someone you think might just come out of nowhere, some team you're like, man, you guys better be watching them. They might be hot.
I actually think we're in a bit of an era where if you look at the list of minor premiers and premiers in the last decade, it's not been shared out as much as it was in the previous 10 years. So I think Melbourne just got to the grand final a year early for their journey.
Yep.
I think Penrith are going through a little bit of renewal again. But Ivan Cleary's released a book, and you tend to release a book when you're at the end of a journey rather than in the middle of one, don't you? So maybe he's starting to think he's at the end of his journey kind of thing.
Yep.
Roosters, I think their squad is somewhat out of whack, like I've mentioned earlier. So I think they may dip a little bit. I think the Titans are going to really struggle. I think Tigers are going to really struggle, but not quite as bad as they did. Broncos will come up a little bit, no doubt. I think there's every chance they could reach the 8 again.
Yep.
Just because of the solidity that Madge will bring to the environment.
Yep.
St. George are also building nicely too. But I do think at the end of next year we're going to have something similar again. Your Melbournes, your Penriths, in or around. One thing about the final series this year, it was really clear who was going to make the final from them all. I think my tips were 9 out of 10 or something like that.
Wow.
In the finals.
So that's got to clearly say the guys at the top have got it right, and the ones that aren't don't.
Yeah. The 6 again rule has changed a lot of things, and I think...
Do you think people struggled with rule changes like that? They just don't adapt, or maybe they interpret how they think it will play out for the year and they completely miss it?
Mate, I think the game doesn't realise the biggest rule change that changed in the early 90s, which was we went from 5 metres to 10 metres.
Yeah.
I still think we're trying to find players. We're trying to find halfbacks in the mould of an old Alan Langer or Peter Sterling. Yeah. The whole era or two of halfbacks now have grown up with double the amount of space. Yeah. Can you imagine a cricket pitch being twice as long, a tennis court being twice as long, a golf hole being twice as long away? All these things would change games fundamentally.
Absolutely.
And change the way bowling happens at cricket, serving happens in tennis, and it changed the amount of shots you need to get into the golf onto the green. So, and we've just brushed over the 10-metre rule as if all we did was get our players fitter so they could crash into each other for long.
They could hit each other harder.
And rugby league keeps evolving sports science-wise, but not in terms of skill, in my opinion. So that's something else I pontificate about in the book too. I don't know if you can actually pontificate in a book, but I have.
You did. Man, because 5 more meters is a lot more time to do something.
Right? Yes.
That's essentially
it's unbelievable. And halfbacks used to have to crack open a code. It was like cracking open a safe, trying to break a defensive line. Now they've got twice the amount of space.
Yeah, so they should be cracking it way more often.
Yeah.
In theory.
Definitely.
I think. Damn, bro. Well, hopefully my Broncos are in the 8, which will mean I will watch more games and celebrate them. But like all good rugby league supporters, I have a backup team, and that is typically Melbourne Storm. So either way, I seem to do okay for the year.
Storm's a great outfit.
What jersey will you wear next year? Would you be wearing on the couch?
My favourite team right now in the world of rugby league is Tonga.
Cool.
Just because of ex-players I've coached and friends associated with it. So
you'll be behind those guys.
That might be I know Tonga don't play NRL, but I tend to be quite neutral when it comes to the NRL.
Yep, you just sit back and enjoy it. Do you watch every single game?
Nope.
No.
No. My ex-assistant says I've got football autism.
Really?
And says that I can't watch a game without analysing it to death. So sometimes it's just best not to.
Just don't. Would you watch it over and over?
No, it's more I can just pick what's happening very quickly and get frustrated with the tactics and stuff. So I just put another channel on.
Yeah, I better not watch that. Watch something else.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you don't find yourself doing that with other sports?
A little bit. Like I'll watch the cricket and I find that if I think there's going to be a low activity period, I'll turn it off for a bit. Yeah. What can I tell you about rugby league? The one thing I really struggle with as well is the fact that not everybody plays each other home and away.
Yeah. It's a bit weird, isn't it?
So I sort of have a look at the first 6 to 8 rounds.
Yeah.
Then I start getting annoyed that so many players are getting injured because we're breaking them on purpose, it seems. And get frustrated with a game, post a load of things on social media to say how frustrated I am with the game, talk on my podcast about how frustrated I am with the game. And then Origin comes around, so we'll watch those 3 games.
Yep.
And then once that's all over, we get close to finals again, so I might have a look at games that can impact that, and then watch the finals game. That's basically my relationship with it, yeah.
I love it.
I hate the NRL when the best players aren't playing.
Oh, yeah.
You know, when they're all playing Origin or injured.
Yeah.
I just don't understand that at all.
Should they do it differently, you reckon? How would you do Origin?
I'd have a window in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's enough other stuff on, right?
Yeah. I'd have a window in the middle of the year and, put things alongside it or whatever.
Yep. Make it a big thing.
Yeah. But the problem is the clubs hold the game to ransom, right? Because of that divorce proceedings I was telling you about. So the clubs want X amount of revenue from games.
Yeah. So if they heard of a playing window where their club's not on a pitch somewhere, they'll be like...
So if Peter Volandis says we're going to cancel 10 of your games and replace them with Origins and Internationals, the first thing the clubs would say, well, how are you going to recoup the 10 games the 5 home games we could have had during that time?
Yeah. And then enough of them get together and they all put the same email out together and say,
that's right.
Together, and then all of a sudden they just got to say,
But this administration is thinking laterally like that and pushing for different things. So all power to them. I can't criticise this current administration for much.
Yeah. Well, mate, the Broncos are going to do well. I'm gonna predict they're
going to do better. It's hard to do worse, really. So,
and I know, and I've looked at their calendar. They've got 2 Sunday games this year, because which I can't remember who they're playing, but that suits very good for family time. My only critic for NRL is I don't like the time of the game. It's too late.
You don't like the time of the game?
It's too late. 7:45. I mean, I get it. I'm sure television and stuff works great, but I'm not going to sit on the couch and watch with my daughter next year because it's her bedtime. So that kind of pulls me out of watching it. And I work, and I'm a bit selfish. I work Thursday night, so I don't like going to Thursday nights.
Rugby league plays a lot when most people who are involved in rugby league are busy training or playing. If they didn't, so if the Broncos played on Sunday afternoons and then everybody in the Brisbane and related leagues said, whenever Broncos are at home, we'll play all our local games on a Friday and Saturday, they'd get 20,000 more people there.
Yeah. Damn. That'd be cool. Brother, mate, I can't thank you enough for coming on and playing.
No problem. I enjoyed it, mate.
Back when the book comes out.
No worries.
We can celebrate the launch of it.
I'll send you one.
Yeah, let's go. That'd be cool. I'd like
Take care, lad.
I only ask one question. It's probably the most important question, and that's what's for lunch?
What's for lunch?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I think I'm going to go to my local cafe.
That'll work. It's good?
Yeah, it's called Christopher's Fine Foods, so it has to be good, really, doesn't it?
They've made a big claim.